Welcome to the Underdog Sniper Podcast. I'm your host, MGCovers. This is episode 74. Happy Monday. Hope everybody had a great weekend. We got the start to NFL. How about that Buffalo-Baltimore game last night? That was absolutely wild. NFL is just really an entertaining sport. It really is. And we'll talk about that later. Very difficult to beat a team by, I had a weird feeling they were coming back. I don't know why, I just did. And that was just from an entertainment perspective, just a great game. If you have Baltimore, that was absolutely brutal. Bad beat on that one as well. But big shout out to everybody on Instagram. I posted a message. If you're new to the podcast, I live in Dominican. I don't have NFL Sunday ticket. And a lot of times it's hard to get services. Like I can't subscribe to YouTube TV here. I don't know why, but I can't. And so I posted, hey, if anybody has a link for NFL, I got a ton of responses. And just so you know, if you don't want to pay for that, there's a ton of ways that you can get access to NFL. Greatly appreciate everybody that contributed and sent me messages. So I was able to watch my, I was about to say Redskins, Commanders get a win. And that was a really good game over the Giants. I watched that one, play golf in the afternoon, and of course, watched the night game. But it was great to have NFL to start. We'll talk about that later in the podcast. So we got a ton to cover. We're going to mention, we're going to cover all of our sports. We'll look at college football classes model, the soccer classes model, talk about some adjustments I might make to the NFL. Didn't wager, and I'll cover NFL in the final segment there. But I want to open this up, and this is such an interesting parallel. I've made a ton of parallels to golf and sports handicapping a lot. My golf game, really improving. I made a big adjustment. I moved to the white tees. If you don't know anything about golf, you have the tips, which are generally like black. Then just below that, the blue tees. And then they have the white tees, which are considered like the average male. And I mean, I'm 56 years old. I'll be 57 in 2 months. So getting up there, and very difficult to be a scratch golfer from the whites. But I ended up shooting, yesterday I shot an even par 72, which was amazing from the whites. And I have learned this from a couple people. And the parallel of golf to sports handicapping is what you think works actually doesn't. More times than not, it's the opposite. And I'll relate this a ton to NFL here as we get started. So you would think to lower your score, intuition tells you about golf, hey, I need to make more birdies. Birdies is basically 1 under par. Instead of shooting a 4 on a par 4, you would shoot a 3. That sounds correct. But in reality, to shoot lower scores, it's all about double bogey avoidance. And that sounds very controversial, but it actually works. There's something on YouTube called the scoring method. I just started applying it. And you basically, I won't get into too much detail, but you just want to avoid double bogeys. If you have trouble on the right, on a tee shot, you don't want to do anything with that. You don't want to aim it there and cut it or anything. You don't want to have anything to do with that. If it means taking a lesser club and putting it in play to simply avoid double bogey, that's what you need to do. So sometimes it's advantageous not to hit driver, even though that's another myth. You want to hit it as far as you possibly can, but not necessarily true if it means you're increasing your probability of double bogey. And it's the same deal way I approach the green. I'll tell you this real quick and we'll dive into sports handicapping. On a green, you look at a green as 4 quadrants, A, B, C, D. So you just break the green down into 4 squares. What square or squares will increase my likelihood of a double bogey? Maybe there's water, or maybe there's like a bunker. So you would want to avoid that and hit it to, the other side. So if A and B is near water and there's a bunker, and then you got C and D over here on the other side, you want to hit it to the C and D side. So it has completely changed my game and made me a much better golfer. And I'm excited about, I don't know if I have the potential to, I don't know if I have the physical ability to get the scratch because I don't hit my drive that far. So that's why I play from the whites. I'm basically a scratch golfer from the whites. If I could get my driver over, 250 plus, 260, 270 could be a possibility because then I'd have to back up to the blues. But super excited about my golf game. And this is true for handicapping and sports betting overall. What you think works, majority of the time doesn't. And many times you're going to have to do the opposite of that. So let's dive into, we'll start with NCAA football. We'll take a look at this model here, classes model, and went 4-5 on Saturday. We didn't start playing it there with the South Carolina game, but this model, the last 2 weeks, classes model plug and play has been profitable. 22-15, 5.5 units. And I want to show you something very interesting. So we lost a lot of away games. You can look here, North Texas loss, Miami of Ohio loss, Mississippi lost. North Carolina away team won. Memphis away team won. Of course, Hawaii won at home. So it's interesting. A client asked, and this goes back to the premise of this podcast so far. Now, if the home team wins 70% of the time, shouldn't we focus on just playing home teams? Well, let me show you this. Super fascinating. Now, that's win. That's not covering. So I created this filter here, and let's take a look at the profit for the model just on home teams. So these are all the home teams we've played via the model. Look at the profit down there in the right-hand corner, minus 0.9 units for the home team, just playing home teams. So obviously, let's take a look at the away teams. Let's add up the profit for all the away teams. Away teams, 5.5 units of profit. So in a lot of ways, to increase the ROI of this model, we could simply just play away teams, as wild as that sounds. And you need to understand why this is. Home teams win 70% of the time. Do the books know that? Yes. Does the majority of the people that wager on sports understand and know that the home team wins an overwhelming majority of the time? Yes. So what happens to the sportsbook line? It's inflated. The proper term for that is shaded. I don't like to use the word shaded because nobody knows what that means, but in layman's terms, it means inflated. So instead of that line being probably -6, it might be -9.5, -10. So if they shade the line to the home side, where's the value? The value is on the opposite side. And that's the case here with this model so far. So very interesting to learn that. And that is applicable to a lot of different sports. If you can find out what's overvalued, and we'll cover that in NFL as well. Sometimes doing the opposite of that will help. So super excited about this model. We'll continue to plug away. I don't think we'll make a ton of changes. There is one small tweak that I'll make, and I'm going to discuss that in a coaching video for clients. But overall, this looks pretty good. We'll continue moving forward this year with week 3. All right, let's take a look at soccer. Haven't wagered soccer. If you know, this is a brand new model. It got up to like 20 units the day we decided to wager. I think I covered that on last week's podcast. It absolutely crashed. It went like 5-14. Ironically, the very next day on that Sunday, it went back up, hit 10 units, and then has been, I think, had a winning day and a losing day. Had a winning day yesterday. Austin in MLS cashed as a plus 190 dog. You can see they were a B team playing a D team. We do play away teams via this model if there's a 2-class differential and we're getting dog money. Dallas was a play against St. Louis in MLS, lost at 220, and then Austin won as a plus 190 dog. So if there's a 2-class separation, we will play an away team. And you can look at their overall. It's a pretty good sample, y'all. 48 and 60, 44%. I would say it needs to be at least 40% or higher. 38% is when that brings in a lot of margin and potential for loss based on the Monte Carlo simulations. Talked about that in last week's podcast. But overall, 48 and 16, 21.89 units is a hell of a model. And I think this model is suited best for league play as opposed to Champions League play, or when you have World Cup qualifying, which is going on right now. I started running it some with that. It seemed like it was better just to play A-class teams playing against B, C, or D. But super excited about this. We'll continue to monitor this. At some point, probably need to dive in and commit to this because this looks like this will actually be profitable long term. All right, now let's turn our attention to NFL classes model. If you remember, I did a public YouTube video this week, and this was the first time I've ever applied classes model to NFL. And I took what I've learned from NCAA football as well as soccer, applied it to this. Normally we'd have A, B, C, and D. I added the E class, which that tends to give bigger separation between the A and the E. Now, first off, let me tell you, we'll review how I looked at this originally because I'm going to show you a profitable way to do this now. So originally what I did was we classified A teams, B, C, D, and E. And then I created a line. I figured out the differential between the A and the B, the A and the C, and then created a line. For example, Philadelphia, Dallas, we had it at -11. I think that line ended up closing at 8. Generally don't like to play a line that is greater than 7 to cover. Statistically speaking, 30% of the time, the margin of victory is going to be 7 or less. So it's advantageous to simply pass on those games, which we did. And of course, Dallas ended up covering there. So then I just basically ran it like strict value. For example, Miami, you can see there was a C team going against Indianapolis, was an E team. We've calculated a difference to be Miami -5, Indy +5. Indy actually won that. The line was Miami +1. So we were getting like a 6-point differential. And the potential plays here were 5. And I calculated a play as having at least a 3-point differential. We had Miami, Washington, Cincinnati, Detroit, Houston. Washington won in a blowout. Miami got blown out. Cincinnati won, didn't cover. And Detroit and Houston lost. Detroit got blown out by Green Bay. And Houston ended up losing to the Rams 14-9. So now what I'm going to do is we're going to talk about some things that I learned hang on a second. Let me show you this sheet, and then I'm going to show you some adjustments we made. Now, if you look here, margin of victory, what you see in this column, this is the margin of victory for the last 5 years for NFL. Posted this on Instagram as well. So if you're not following me there, please do so. It's MGCovers, cover spelled with a Z. There's a link in the description of this video. So you get a ton of value simply by following me on Instagram. All right, average margin of victory. The 3 margin is the most popular margin. It is the highest mode. That means it's going to land on the 3 more than any other number in the NFL, 15.1% of the time. This is the last 5 years, by the way. The 7, which is basically a touchdown, 7.5. So if you add the 3 and the 7 together, the NFL game is more likely to end in a 3 and a 7 than any other number. The 6 is next at 7.1. Now we finally get the blowout numbers coming in, a 10 and a 14. The 10 is 5.1%. The 14 is 4.9%. And I won't read through all these, but the next most popular numbers are 2, 5, 4, 1, 8. And those are respectively 4.8, 4.8, 4.6, 4.5, 4.5. So we have a total of 10 different margins of victory ranging from 1 all the way up to 14. Now, if you take out the 10, 14, and 8, which are all beyond a touchdown, 48% of the time, this number is going to be, half of the time, you can assume the margin of victory will be a touchdown or less in the NFL. So 50% of the time, game's going to be very tight. Now, I want you to think in terms of mode, and what mode means is the most popular number that occurs more than any other number. So we really don't have a mode per se, but I want you to think in those terms. So if you have all these numbers, these 3, 7, 6, 10, 14, 2, 5, 4, 1, 8, only 3 times is the margin of victory greater than a 7. So as far as it landing on a number under 7 or less is basically a 70% of the time. So the better way to think of that is, or application of that, very difficult for any NFL team to win by more than a touchdown. So now let's go over to the actual lines and take a look at this. So we had 2 lines from week 1 that were greater than the 7.5. The first one we're going to look at is Tennessee and Denver. Tennessee was 8.5, did not cover that number. Tennessee covered. Why? Statistically, just looking at the game, what's most likely the likely occurrence? Is it more likely for Denver to cover the 8.5, or is it more likely for Tennessee to cover the plus 8.5? It's more likely for Tennessee to cover the 8.5. Why? I just showed you the proof there. Statistically, only about a 30% chance of them winning by more than a touchdown. The other example was from Dallas and Philadelphia, first game of the season. This one opened at a 7, then went beyond 7 up to an 8, which is a significant difference. Again, same deal there, which is most likely to occur. Philadelphia to cover the -8 or for Dallas to cover the +8. More likely for Dallas to cover the +8. So we go back to this chart here. This is NFL more than any other sport. You have to understand the numbers before you can even place any wagers. It is a very complex sport that is centered around numbers, and you have to understand these numbers before you even start to wager. Now, let's apply some of this to the classes model. Now, you look there, you see B team, Chargers, Cincinnati, San Francisco, and Green Bay. So what my thinking was, going back to the premise of this whole podcast, in theory, what I thought would work, teams. Let's play the 8 teams. 8 teams will win. They have a big margin of victory. They'll win more frequently than a B team, C team, D team, or A team. The problem with that is what? They will be overvalued in the marketplace, right? So what I did here is I said, hey, instead of playing A teams, let's just focus on B teams that are less than 7 or less. Okay. So the first game here, and we'll play B team. So we have Kansas City playing a Chargers team. And again, we're just going to ignore we're not even going to create a line. We're just focusing on the class itself. So the trigger point would be play the Chargers as long as that line is 7 or less. So here we had Chargers. This was Friday night. And of course, we would not play that we would not take the points. The reason being is teams that win in the NFL also cover 80% of the time. You can say it the other way as well. Teams that cover win outright 80% of the time. This week, right now, it's 11-4. So that means, listen to me, the spread only mattered in 4 games this week so far. That's it. Meaning, if you would pick the winner, that's all you have to do in NFL. So if you think the favorite's going to win, you lay the points. If you think the dog's going to win, you would play them on the money line. And again, what's very incredible about sports handicapping, when someone says something, you can, because this is a math-based business, you can verify it. So if I'm telling you that the teams that win and cover or teams that cover win outright 80% of the time, you can actually fact check that. You can go back to week 4 of last year. You can look at week 10 of 2 years ago and get a decent sample size. And you'll see that 10 teams that win cover 80% of the time, and teams that cover win outright 80% of the time. That's what it is. That's what the numbers are. So I encourage you, when you hear somebody say something, if it's me, if it's another handicapper, somebody pretending to educate you, always verify that. A lot of times what you'll see or what you'll realize is a lot of people spitting out information. It's invalid. I made a video about a handicapper, very popular handicapper. He said buying points in NCAA basketball would increase your win percentage. It was totally invalid. You would absolutely get crushed doing that. It has zero impact on your handicapping. You should never buy points. Never buy points in any sport. There's zero benefits to that. And I proved it in that video as well. All right. So now we take this information that I've just discussed here, and let's look at application of that. So we'll go back here to the classes model, to this sheet here. So application of that, we play the Chargers. Let me show you what the plays would be. They went outright 1.47 units gained. Cincinnati, another B team, they lost -1.1. San Francisco wins as a B team. Green Bay wins as a B team for a total of 2.37 units. And again, the whole premise of this, teams will be overvalued, but we still want to create a model where we have a percentage chance, a greater percentage chance of winning than losing, obviously. So we play the B teams and we get a ton of value. So we come back over here and let's look at this. Of course, we'll start with the Chargers there. That line was +3. They win 27-21. The other one there, you had Green Bay playing a Detroit team. So we had Green Bay as a B team playing Detroit and a quote A team. We could have, after this week, we might potentially add and make Green Bay an A team, but nonetheless, they were a B team. So via these new rules, we would play Green Bay there. Green Bay wins. The other one, San Francisco there, a B team playing Seattle. I think Seattle was a C team. Let's check and see. Yep, San Francisco B, Seattle was a C team there. Go back to the lines. And then, of course, Cincinnati here, B team playing Cleveland, who I think I had as an E team, but they won, but unable to cover there 17-16. But nonetheless, I've talked about this a lot. One thing you need to get good at if you're going to do this business and be successful, you got to be able to take a model. And a lot of times your interpretation of the model is not the best way to play the model. And more than likely, A teams in NFL, which I thought would originally might work, it might be advantageous or better if I'm applying classes model to actually play in B teams this way. Again, relatively small sample size. I'm only using 1 week, so I'm not sure if this would work long-term or not. I do want to show you something pretty fascinating. I went back and looked at my numbers for NFL. I show you this. I guess I'm going to make several points of this. And let me just go through this quickly. 24, we were 25-20, up 6.6 units. We had a 16.6% ROI, really good. 2023 was the only losing season I've ever had in my career in NFL. 13-15, -7% ROI, very small loss there. 2022, this was when I realized NFL was changing. This was when teams started playing cover 2-man, 2 safeties deep. So this was a big sort of paradigm shift in NFL and also affected handicapping. Nonetheless, we were still profitable. And this is a very important point. We hit 44%, went 18-23, up 3.4 units with a 13% ROI, which is really, really, really solid. The reason we're able to do that, we played dogs on the money line. I'm not advantageous to take the points in NFL. Just showed you why teams that win cover 80% of the time. Those teams that are covering, advantageous to play them on the money line. 2021, 17-16, hit 51%, 15.21% ROI. 2020, the big COVID year, 17-14, hit 55%. Look at that ROI, 38.83% ROI. So again, NFL is a sport I've really done extremely well with and super excited. Now, last year we did run a model. We started late. One negative to NFL, I think it's advantageous to wait. Those plays you saw via your classes model did not play any of those. I will probably wait another week. I think it's better to get sufficient data for NFL and then sort of get a gauge to the market, because you want to see how the books react to the market. Teams are sort of figuring out teams. It takes a while. Again, going back to Detroit might be a B team. Green Bay might be an A team. I heard some buzz about Kansas City finally regressing. It could be. Maybe they go to like a 50% team this year, win ratio. Who knows? It's a very complex sport, and I think the more information that you have, letting the markets adjust, I think it's easier to handicap. All of these seasons you see here, I never wagered early. At best, at the earliest, I probably wagered maybe week 3. Maybe week 2, I can't really remember, but more than likely, I didn't start until like weeks 3 or weeks 4 till we had sufficient data to, quote, get a gauge of what's going on. So nonetheless, still excited about this. We'll have an actual model. The model we ran, big shout out to Eric. Eric helped me with it last year. He's also our UFC handicapper, having an extremely successful year in UFC. So we'll continue to run that model, but won't actually post it. We may post it for week 3 and then sort of gauge it. Might have some plays then, but obviously we'll start wagering there on week 4. And also we'll remind you that you don't want to wager late in NFL. So it's a very small, this is what makes NFL very difficult to handicap, very difficult to play extremely early. I just showed you that. If I would have played via the model, classes model, we'd have went 1-4. And also, too, it's difficult to assess motivation late in the season. So you have just this very small window to make profit in NFL. People put a ton of money into NFL handicapping. Overall, it's not a sport where you can hit 20, 30, 40 units. It's just not possible. And again, that's grading one play as one unit. If you're ignorant and uneducated about sports handicap, a lot of people are, you'll see things out there where a guy says, oh, we made 20 units on this play. One play is 1 unit. That's how this is graded. That's the correct way to grade it. So you know how you're calculating ROI. What I mean by that, if you play the Chargers plus 147 and win that, you win 1.47 units. That's the correct way to grade it. If you would lose that one, that'd be -1. If you play a favorite and they lose, I graded it off of 110 odds. So you would lose -1.1 units. So just for some clarity there. So anyway, so that's a wrap for this podcast. Hope you enjoyed it. Super excited. Don't forget, I've launched the Substack. That's how I'm going to teach modeling. It's absolutely free. There's a link to get access to my Substack. So I've posted about 3 or 4 posts already. We'll eventually go to a paid version of that where you'll get all the posts. Even if you subscribe to it for free, you'll probably get at least 1 post per week, mainly related to building models. If you want to join the service that we have power rankings for soccer. So those plays that we show for soccer, you'll get access to that. The college football model, all the plays for college football, $50 a month. If you want my personal plays, $100 a month. And if you join for the year, it's probably the best thing you could do. Instead of paying $100 each month, you can pay $499 one time, save about $600 off paying each month. Gives you access to everything on the website for $500. Link to join in the description. Really appreciate you guys listening to this podcast. Talk to y'all this week. Peace.